Hey everybody, Nate Carter here with today's Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional. Now, there's a Bible verse that over the last few years I've used over and over again. You've heard me use it in worship services, probably even used it here, and perhaps you have it memorized as well. It's Romans 8:28. Let me read it for you and then let's talk about it a little bit. Romans 8:28, this is from the ESV. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. Let me read it once more. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. Now, this is probably one of those Bible verses that is frequently misinterpreted. I think that there's three ways to understand it. The first one is definitely wrong. The second one is probably the one that I understood for a long time. And the third one is maybe a new way that I'm understanding it now that I think is probably the accurate way. So the first way to understand this verse that I think is wrong is that for those that love God, God turns everything out in a way that we're going to love. He works everything out into our desires, our hopes, our dreams, our pleasure. That if we trust God, He's gonna make life good and easy for us. That we should be able to very quickly realize is not the way to interpret that verse, and I think it can lead us to a really inappropriate and dangerous theology if that's what we believe. Because the proof's in the pudding, right? I mean, we know Christians, millions of Christians who have lived around the world whose lives are difficult from beginning to end, that good would not be how you describe it. So the second way to interpret this verse is how I've probably understood it most of my life, which is that God takes what looks to be bad and then eventually makes it into something that's going to be good for us, something that we're going to like. So it's kind of like the idea that if we just if we gut through it, if we persevere through this hard time, that sometime later on in life things are going to turn out well for us and we're going to be happy again. The problem with that is that that's maybe a little bit more palatable because it's like, okay, I just have to hang on in here, I just have to persevere, and then later in my life it's going to be good again. The problem with that is that that's also not true, but you can see the proof in the lives of so many people as well. I think that a lot of times God does bring wonderful, pleasant things into our lives, but not always. And there are many who have gone to their graves enduring pain, enduring loss and sadness and hardship. And so that can't be the translation or the interpretation of this text. The way that I just recently heard it described, that I think is really the accurate way to understand this verse, is to reinterpret that word good. What is good? How is God making all things good? If people, there are millions around the world who will spend their lives suffering. Well, it's because what good what is good? It's making us more like Jesus. This author that I was reading was saying that God's intention is to create a world full of little Jesuses, people who have lived the way that he did, who embody his character. Another way to look at that is the fruit of the Spirit. And so during our hardships, for those who are called according to his purpose, God is creating good. He's creating people who are filled with love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and so on. That those are the things that he's developing in us. That's what's good. He's creating little Jesuses that are filled with the fruit of the Spirit. Now, what the reason that I like that interpretation is because that seems extremely accurate to the way that life really works for believers. That whether or not God makes life eventually pleasant for you, you can be certain that in the midst of everything, in the midst of every hardship, he is developing the fruit of the Spirit in you, the fruit of Jesus, to make you more like him, so that one day when we're in his presence, we've developed those characteristics within our hearts. And that is what is good. One way to understand this is to think about the military. The U.S. military is like no other. We have a fierce and formidable military, and part of the reason for that. And I'm not a military guy. I'm not from a military family, but from what I understand, part of the reason for that is the training that our troops go through. That they are rigorously trained, so that they are pushed to their limit and sometimes beyond, in order to develop what is good, to develop a soldier who is fit both physically and mentally for battle, so that when they're called upon to act, that they are capable to do whatever they're called upon to do. But would you call that good when you're being woken up in the middle of the night? Would you call that good when you're being pushed beyond your physical limits? Would you call any of that good? Well, only if you can redefine what good is. Because again, with these soldiers, they're being developed with the characteristics of what a soldier will need in order to fulfill his or her duties. In the same way as Christians, we're being developed as God's soldiers. To be able to fulfill the duties that He has for us, to be filled with the characteristics of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. So as you go through your day, as you go through the ups and downs of life, understand what good is. That God is working all things for good, and by that, He's building the characteristics of Jesus within us. I think that can help us to endure through the tough times of life. Well, I hope that encourages you today. We'll see you next time on the Cornerstone Connection.